Somewhere in January this year, a man opened his phone and typed a few sentences that ended up in a local news broadcast in Kansas City, Missouri. His name is Mohammed Safa. He's the executive director of an organization called Patriotic Vision, and he holds special status at the United Nations. He had bought World Cup tickets. He was planning to go. And then he posted on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and said he had canceled them. His reason was one paragraph long, and it went viral. "The ICE may decide that I'm a gang member," he wrote, "and I'll be locked in prison for a year with no charges, no hearing, no trial, no right to consult a lawyer, no phone call. The U.S. is not safe to visit." A UN-affiliated figure, canceled tickets, a public statement about fear of arbitrary detention in a country hosting a World Cup. That post didn't stay inside Safa's network. It got screenshotted, it got quote tweeted, it got stitched on TikTok, it got translated into Spanish, French, and Arabic, and within days it had become part of something bigger, a growing, uncoordinated, genuinely grassroots movement of football fans around the world who were using social media not just to express frustration, but to organize. The hashtag was simple: Boycott World Cup. And what happened next is the story we're going to tell today. Not the official story, not FIFA's statement or the State Department's FAQ page. The real story. The one that started on people's phones, spread across every platform, and turned into something nobody at FIFA headquarters was prepared for. Let's go back to the beginning. To understand why the social media movement around the 2026 World Cup took off the way it did, you have to understand what was already happening in the travel conversation before a single post went viral. In December 2025, a proposal emerged from U.S. Customs and Border Protection that immediately caught the attention of millions of people in football-loving countries. Under the proposed new rules, travelers visiting the United States under the Visa Waiver Program, that's visitors from 42 countries including the UK, Australia, Japan, South Korea, most of Europe, and many others, would need to provide something new when applying for their travel authorization. 5 years of social media history. Not just the platforms, the actual usernames, every account, every handle, viewable, searchable, part of the official entry process. On top of that, email addresses used in the last 10 years, phone numbers from the last 5 years, information about family members, and in some cases, facial image data and IP address metadata. The U.S. Travel Association immediately responded, warning that forcing tourists to hand over years of online speech would deter visitors at the worst possible time, just months before the biggest sporting event in American history was supposed to bring millions of international fans through the country's airports. But it wasn't the industry statement that made this explode. It was the reaction from ordinary people who looked at that requirement and did a very simple calculation. They scrolled back 5 years of their own social media. They thought about every opinion they'd ever posted, every news story they shared, every comment on a match that touched something geopolitical, every moment of solidarity with a cause that might look to a consular officer in a different country with a different worldview like a flag. And they thought about whether they were comfortable handling all of that to the US government as the price of a football ticket. A lot of them decided they weren't. Here's where things get interesting, because the social media movement wasn't just one conversation. It was several conversations happening simultaneously, in different languages, on different platforms, driven by completely different concerns, and they all arrived at the same hashtag. On TikTok, the discourse was visceral and immediate. One video went quietly viral that showed a hospitality package from FIFA's own platform. The price on screen, $23,031. The creator's caption, "Gotta sell the house for this one." It was funny, and it wasn't funny, because behind the joke was a real number that real fans were looking at and feeling something very specific. The feeling that this tournament, which was supposed to be the most accessible in history, had been built for someone who wasn't them. Another TikTok showed the U.S. government's own State Department website with the FIFA Pass system requirements laid out in bureaucratic language. The creator read it aloud, slowly, in a voice that started calm and ended incredulous. "You are still subject to thorough screening and vetting. A FIFA Pass appointment does not guarantee a visa will be issued. Having a ticket has no influence on whether you qualify for a visa." Comments flooded in. Fans from Senegal, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Cape Verde, all countries that had qualified for the tournament, pointing out that even with tickets, even with the fast-track system, their applications would still go through the same security process that had been denying visas to people from their countries for months. The FIFA Pass system was real, but the State Department itself had confirmed in writing that for citizens of countries subject to travel restrictions, there was no bypass, no exception. A ticket got you a faster interview. It didn't get you past the ban. On X, the conversation ran deeper and angrier when news broke in April that the U.S. government was reportedly considering screening World Cup attendees' social media for what officials described as anti-Semitic content. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Some users supported the measure. Many others described it as an extension of surveillance logic into the heart of a sporting event that was supposed to transcend this kind of thing. Scanning social media to decide who can attend a football tournament is absolutely insane, one verified user wrote. This is a World Cup, not a TSA checkpoint. That post got hundreds of thousands of impressions. And on Reddit, where football fan communities often have the most granular and internationally diverse discussions, threads in subreddits dedicated to every major national team were filling up with the same recurring question, translated into every language. Should we even bother trying? A Dutch fan who'd been to Qatar, a Senegalese supporter whose brother had already been rejected for a U.S. visa, a Moroccan family who'd won tickets in the first ballot and were now reconsidering the entire trip, an English fan who'd looked at their own Twitter history and found a retweet from 2023 they weren't sure how to explain to a consular officer, all of them asking the same question. Now let's look at what the actual numbers tell us, because what makes this particular social media movement different from every boycott conversation the World Cup has generated before is that it appears to have produced measurable, real-world effects, not just noise. The American Hotel and Lodging Association released data showing that nearly 80% of hotels across the 11 U.S. host cities are reporting bookings below initial projections. In Seattle, expected international visitor numbers have been revised down by 17%. Hotel room rates in Dallas have dropped from nearly $400 a night to $250 as properties try to stimulate demand that's simply not arriving. The U.S. Travel Association, which spent years lobbying for the World Cup to come to America, published a warning describing the country as heading in the wrong direction, pointing out that America is on track to be the only one of 184 countries analyzed to see a decline in international visitor spending in 2025. At the same time, the Boycott World Cup Facebook group crossed 25,000 members. A petition in the Netherlands demanding the Dutch national team withdrawal gathered 174,000 signatures. The Danish supporters community began publicly discussing whether traveling to the U.S. was worth the risk. German Federation Vice President Oke Gutlick gave an interview in which he directly invoked the 1980 Olympic boycotts as a comparison point and said, in terms that couldn't be clearer, that the football world needed to have this conversation. Are those things directly connected? The hotel numbers and the hashtag? The petition signatures and the booking data? Not in a simple linear way. Correlation isn't causation. Hotel bookings are affected by many things: airfare costs, exchange rates, economic conditions, the broader decline in American tourism that predated the World Cup by months. It would be a stretch to say the Boycott World Cup hashtag is the reason the hotels are half empty. But here's what is true. When you put together the social media movement, the petition numbers, the federation-level conversations in Germany and the Netherlands, the ACLU travel advisory signed by more than 120 organizations, and the hotel data, you get a picture of a sentiment that is real, widespread, and substantial enough to have shifted the tourism economics of a World Cup host country. That is something that has never happened at this scale before. But here's the part of the story that often gets lost in the noise. Not everyone who posted under that hashtag actually canceled anything. Not every post telling people to boycott came from someone who had tickets in the first place. And some of the social media activity around this story has been amplified, distorted, and occasionally weaponized by people with agendas that have nothing to do with football. That Mohamed Safa post in January, the one that kicked off a week of viral sharing, was reported by a local Kansas City TV station, which noted something important in its coverage. The people claiming to have canceled their tickets may have been referring to their applications in a FIFA ticket ballot, not confirmed purchases. And once a ballot window closes, you can't actually cancel an application that's already been processed. The station reached out to the Kansas City 2026 host committee, which said its focus remained on delivering the best experience for fans. The USCIS social media requirement, which became one of the central viral grievances, is still technically a proposal. It hasn't been formally implemented as of this week, though USCIS did confirm in March that it had implemented its largest ever expansion of social media screening to date across various visa categories. The line between proposed policy and enacted policy has blurred significantly in the coverage, which has led some fans to make decisions based on scenarios that may not fully reflect the actual current entry requirements. And the claim that went viral in April that the U.S. government would ban World Cup attendees based on social media screening for anti-Semitic content was described by IB Times UK and other fact-checking outlets as an exaggeration of what officials had actually announced. The U.S. Special Envoy for Anti-Semitism said clearly that everybody is judged as an individual and dismissed reports that European politicians would be barred as a group. None of that means the concerns aren't real. The $15,000 visa bond was real, and it was only waived 2 days ago, on May 14th, following pressure from FIFA and African football federations. The ACLU travel advisory was real. The immigration enforcement questions remain unanswered in writing. The travel restrictions on fans from Haiti, Iran, and Ivory Coast remain in place. Those things are documented. But the social media conversation around this World Cup has been a place where real concerns, exaggerated claims, and outright misinformation have all mixed together in the same feed. And a fan in Amsterdam trying to decide whether to book a flight to Seattle in June is navigating all of that simultaneously without the time or resources to verify every headline. The result is that the emotional temperature around attending this tournament is higher than it probably should be for some fans, and possibly lower than it should be for others who don't yet know about access barriers that are genuinely real. Here's the thing that nobody at FIFA seems to have fully reckoned with yet, and it's the thing that makes this social media movement historically significant, regardless of how it ultimately affects attendance numbers. This is the first World Cup where the conversation about whether to go has been conducted entirely in the open, in real time, across every major platform, with millions of people contributing simultaneously. Qatar in 2022 had a boycott conversation. It was loud, but it played out primarily in newspapers, on television, and in official statements from politicians and federations. Ordinary fans had opinions, but they didn't have a coordination mechanism that allowed those opinions to aggregate into something visible and measurable. 174,000 Dutch fans didn't sign a single petition in 2022. They talked to each other, and then they went to Qatar. In 2026, the infrastructure for fan sentiment is completely different. A single post from a UN official in January travels to every football fan subreddit by the afternoon. A TikTok of a $23,000 hospitality package gets 1 million views before the algorithm moves on. A German Federation vice president's newspaper interview about the 1980 Olympics gets translated into 14 languages overnight, with accounts with combined followings in the hundreds of millions. The result is that FIFA is running a 104-match tournament against a live, permanent, globally visible commentary track that it has no ability to moderate, correct, or reframe in real time. Every piece of bad news gets amplified instantly. Every policy reversal, like the visa bond waiver, arrives after months of damage that the reversal itself can't fully undo. A travel advisory from the ACLU and 120 organizations reaches every football fan on the planet within hours. The White House calls it ridiculous scare tactics, and a fan in Lagos or Jakarta or Oslo is left to decide who to believe, and whether the football is worth the risk of finding out. So where does this leave us? 26 days from the opening kickoff. The honest answer is that the social media movement has done something permanent to this tournament story, regardless of what happens from here. The conversation has happened. The concerns have been raised publicly, repeatedly, by credible voices. The hotel data reflects something real. The petition numbers are real. The canceled applications, however many of them were technically cancelable, represent a genuine withdrawal of enthusiasm from people who love this sport. FIFA, for its part, obtained the visa bond waiver. Infantino confirmed Iran's participation personally. The opening ceremonies in Mexico City, Toronto, and Los Angeles are lined up and ready. The football, 48 teams, the best players on earth, 104 matches, is going ahead. But something has shifted that can't be shifted back. This is the first World Cup where the access question, who is actually welcome here, not in theory but in practice, was debated on social media by tens of millions of people before a single ball was kicked. And the answer that came back from that debate was more complicated, more contested, and more painful than FIFA's original promise suggested it would be. The best-case scenario from here is the one that has always saved World Cups from their pre-tournament noise. The football starts. A debutant nation pulls off a stunning upset. A superstar scores a goal nobody will forget. The cameras pan to the stands, and the stands are full, and the colors and the noise remind everyone all at once why this sport has the power it has, and the social media conversation shifts. Not to boycott, not to concern, to joy, to shared experience, to the thing that football does better than anything else, making people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, even when everything surrounding it is imperfect. That shift can happen. It has happened before, but it depends on what the tournament delivers once the whistle blows. Whether the people who were afraid to come find ways to be part of it from wherever they are, whether the stadiums fill with the full range of humanity that a World Cup is supposed to attract, whether the quiet personal decision made by thousands of individual fans, the one we started this video with, turns out to have been the wrong call. We find out on June 11th. I want to know where you stand on this, genuinely, not the political angle, the human football angle. If you had tickets and you'd seen everything we've talked about today, the social media posts, the visa requirements, the concerns that haven't been resolved, would you still go? And for those of you who are going, what made you decide the football was worth it? Drop it in the comments. These conversations are what this channel is here for. If this gave you something real to think about, hit the like button. It genuinely makes a difference for the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're covering this tournament from every angle between now and July 19th. This story is still developing, and as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.